Today we're going to be talking about divorce and the effects of divorce on children. Divorce is a hard time for any child. It's a lot of change and a lot of new experiences, and a time where parents are separating and they might not see one parent as much as the other, and so it can definitely cause some problems for the children. We're going to be talking about different steps that parents can take in order to help transition their child through that divorce. It's important for parents to know these steps and be able to follow them, because the better a parent transitions their child and helps their child and supports them, the easier the time the child will have through that divorce. How the parents react will impact the child and make a huge difference on the security and stability that child has felt through the divorce. Um, Sesame Street addresses divorce in a recent episode, and it has a song that they sing, and it says, Mom's tree is over there, Dad's in another tree. Um, they live in different places, but they both loved me. And then it also says, now I have two homes where I feel lots of love. I think that it was good for Sesame Street to come out with an episode on divorce, because so many children are going through this. And so it is good to talk about divorce and be able to explain divorce in a childlike way. But I also think that society can normalize divorce to where it becomes an okay thing, and it's okay just to get divorced, and the children will be all right, and everything's going to work out great, and that can be true. However, steps do need to be taken, like I said, in order to help that child. It's not just a fairy tale. So I wanted to give some statistics on divorce that are real life. And the first one I found is that divorce ends 40 to 50% of first marriages, and approximately 1 million children per year are affected by a parent's divorce in the United States. Of these children that are affected by divorce, 31% of those children versus 13% of those children from intact families drop out of high school. 33% of children from divorce versus 11% of children from intact families will become teen mothers. 11% of children from divorce versus 5% of boys from divorce will spend time in jail before the age of 32. So I think these are some raw statistics that show that divorce really does affect children, and it really can have a huge impact on many areas of their life. And so it's important to realize those facts and to educate families on that. So these statistics, 40 to 50% of first marriages are ended in divorce, and so I'm sure many of us in this room have had that, felt that impact, or seen it in some friend or family. And many of us may have had parents divorce, we might have divorced, friends have divorced, brothers and sisters, and so we are all impacted by it, and we all, I'm sure, can identify somebody that has gotten a divorce, or a child that has seen their parents divorce. And so divorce is just a huge thing in America, and it can be a problem if it's not taken care of right away. So as I said, as a parents, we can control a lot of what happens to our children through the divorce. If we take the proper steps, we will be able to help them. So the negative effects can be controlled to a certain extent. And this is what we're going to identify from throughout the rest of this presentation, is how to help your child transition. It's been proven that children from higher conflict divorces experience harsher effects than those from lower conflict divorces. So the more fighting and the more bickering that happens, the harder and the harsher that child's experience will be. And so we need to be able to control that conflict in a proper and appropriate way. So in order to reduce conflict and the harmful effects on children, we will identify 4 different steps that can be taken by parents in order to help alleviate the symptoms and the after effects of divorce. These four different steps are to allow a relationship with both parents. And then I'm also going to talk about joint custody and what joint custody means. And then no manipulation and what that means. Like, what does no manipulation look like? And how to maintain a child's schedule throughout the divorce and through both homes, which is really extremely important. So the first step is to foster and develop a relationship with both parents for the child. This can be difficult because, you know, through divorce, lots of hard feelings are felt, and, you know, parents can be mad and, you know, not want to let their child be in that relationship. But that's not what's best for the child. And throughout the divorce, the child's needs need to be put first. And so in order to let them develop that relationship with the other parent would be putting the child's needs first. So, and it's just important to remember that, you know, if one parent wins, then the other parent loses. So if it's a battle between parents on who can win and who can vie for the child's affection the most, then the child is the one losing because they're the one that won't be able to have that relationship. So the more contact the child has with both parents, the more security and stability they will have. So it's not the child's job to create those relationships and to maintain those relationships. In many situations, the children won't have phones. They won't have a car. They won't have access to the things they need in order to develop those relationships. So it is both parents' job to make that an important part of the routine and the schedule, is to, you know, include each parent in on decision making and day-to-day life, and just, you know, allowing that child to be in both of their lives. Sometimes when divorce happens, the child is stripped away from one or the other parent, and, you know, that can create a lot of insecurity. And so just the more contact they have with that parent is the best, most beneficial thing for the child. So it's important to remember that the parent creates that relationship, not the child. Custody is a huge thing in divorce, and so that's one thing that needs to be talked about before the divorce happens is, you know, how are we going to handle the custody? What is Johnny going to do? Where is he going to live? Where is he going to stay? And who's going to pay for this and pay for that? And so that's a huge thing to discuss before. And joint custody is one way that children can be able to split time equally with both parents. I was researching custody issues, and it said that 20.5% of custody cases of all divorces were split custody, whereas 69.6% were granted to the mother, and 9.8% weren't granted to the dad. So the least amount of custody is granted to the father, then second is shared custody, and third is granted to the mothers. So it's really mothers that, you know, benefit from the custody agreement, and many times get to see the children the most. So, you know, fathers really need, you know, a part in that child's life and are really extremely important in the development of a child. And so we need to make sure that both mom and dad have equal amount of time with the child. So what is joint custody? Joint custody is 1/3 of the time with one parent and 1/3 of the time with the other parent, and the other third can be split. Is split most of the time, or is holidays or different things like that. Whereas sole custody, which is really popular, which is what, you know, when mother gets it or father gets it, not both. So sole custody is 2/3 of the time with one parent and only 1/3 of the time with the other parent. So sole custody is in favor of one parent rather, whereas joint custody is in favor of both parents and splitting the time equally. Joint custody is also not just physical time with the child. It's also split responsibility between both parents. The split responsibility can be anything from finances to school meetings, doctor visits. So each person has equal amount of say and equal amount of involvement in every activity in the child's life, and that's extremely important for parents to be both involved in all areas of in the child's life. It's also important to remember that it's not just about physical custody and who sees the child the most, because if that time is not quality time, then it's not the same. It's not pointless, but it's not as beneficial. So that time spent with the child needs to be quality time. It can't be time always at the babysitter or time watching television, playing video games. There needs to be family activities that make the child connected and constantly, in conversation and spending time together. So that is a huge pro of joint custody, is that each parent equally spends the same amount of time with the child, and there's equal responsibility in all areas of life. So it's not just mom takes care of school, dad takes care of this. No, mom and dad both take care of school. So it's extremely important in joint custody. Some cons of joint custody, however, are that the child may be constantly back and forth, one house to the other. So this might be really confusing to the child, and it might, in some cases, create instability. And some people can say that it is harmful to the child to be going back and forth. However, through our last step in scheduling, I'll talk about how that can be mediated to some degree, the going back and forth and just maintaining schedules and maintaining rituals and just always the child always knowing what he should and shouldn't be doing, and both houses communicating and being on the same page. So that can be a con, but again, parents can alleviate that to some extent. So I think that altogether joint physical custody is very beneficial to children because it puts their needs first, and it allows them to develop and maintain that relationship with their parents, with both parents. The next step is no manipulation. Many times divorces again are hard feelings, and so the child can be put in the middle of that, and it's really very, very negative for the child to be put in the middle of a divorce situation. Manipulation is also is using the child to get what you want for yourself through the child. So parents can be using the child to see what mom's doing or see what dad's doing, or saying bad things about the other parent so that the child loves you more, and that's just really swaying the child's opinion and is very detrimental to children. And so parents need to remember not to manipulate the child. And in not manipulating, you're putting the child's best interests first. Parents need to remember that grown-up problems are for grown-ups, and child problems are for children. And so it's extremely important to tell the child about the divorce and be honest about the divorce. But it's not okay to air out dirty laundry, and it's not okay to constantly be negative. We can tell the child about the divorce and what happens, and prepare them for what's to come, but then that should be the end of it. There shouldn't be an everyday conversation about, this is what your dad has done wrong, and this is what your mom has done wrong, and that, at that point it becomes manipulation and it becomes detrimental to the child. And so the child does need to be informed. However, they do not need to be drug into the middle of the problem. So other issues that shouldn't be talked about are, parents shouldn't talk about money with their children, and money problems, and well, mom didn't pay for this, and so you don't gonna do this. That's not a child problem. It needs to stay between the parents, and and that's it. Don't bring them into that. Don't manipulate, and don't bring them into grown-up problems. Um, Sometimes people think that just arguing and fighting is completely negative. However, the silence can be just as negative for a child. Children are perceptive, and they will know when there's a problem going on. And so it's important as the parents to not only keep the arguments to themselves, but it's also important to model communication, give and take. It's good for the children to see that, and being cold and being hostile to each other is just as harmful. Children will see that, and they'll understand it, and it'll be harmful to them. So not only should we not argue, and should we not yell, but we should also not give each other the cold shoulder and talk between friends, or it's good for the child to see us communicate appropriately, and talk about problems, but in a calm and rational tone rather than yelling and screaming. So we just have to remember that as well, that it's not always the arguing, it's also the silence that can be detrimental to the child. The next thing I wanted to talk about is scheduling. Scheduling is extremely important when trying to manage conflict, and in order to provide security and stability for a child. I want to do a short activity with you guys. I want you to think about and write down the child's schedule as it is right now before the divorce, or what it was before the divorce. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that. And then after you have the schedule written down, I want you to take some time to identify the things that the child can, or things in the schedule that can stay the same, that don't have to change, like such as babysitters, or daycare, or the school system, extracurricular activities. And so identify those activities that can stay the same, and that you can talk about with your spouse, and in order to create that stability and maintain the same schedule. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do that. 3 minutes later, I would come back and just have the parents maybe identify different things that they identified that could stay the same, and maybe how those schedules might change, and how they can help the child through that change. If the schedule is going to change, the child should be aware of the change before it happens, not in the middle of it. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm taking you to a new babysitter. They need to be prepared for that, and possibly meet the new babysitter, explore the new school before that change happens. So any step that's going to be changed, the child needs to be aware about, so that they can prepare themselves for that change. Little things like that can create insecurity in a child, and parents need to be able to sit down together and say, this is what should stay the same, this is what can change, and this is what, I think, this is the plan that I think should happen. So it's good for parents to be able to talk about those things, and to maintain as much of the same schedule as possible. I know that is not always feasible, everything to stay the same, but as much as possible should stay the same. Parents I also wanted to talk about how babysitting schedules may stay the same, but it's also important for the people and the lives of the children to stay the same. if everything's changing and mom's going somewhere and dad's going somewhere else, you know, that can create insecurity. But if we can keep the other people around them the same and keep their team of people that they know and they trust the same, it's also going to go a long way towards creating stability and security in a child. So it's important for parents to remember that, and babysitters and family members and every other person, school teachers, they should all be identified and talked about, and you know, try to maintain those relationships. I think it's also important to remember to identify and develop a holiday schedule and a day-to-day routine, and that routine can be posted for children to see so that they know exactly what day they are where and exactly what day they have this activity and when they're with this parent and who's picking them up from this, and also in the holiday schedule, what holiday are they with dad and what holiday are they with mom, and it's just really important for the schedule to be laid out for the child in order to create that stability and that security. In order to, in conclusion, in order to create a low conflict divorce, in order to mediate some of the effects on children, parents should remember and develop and maintain a relationship with both parents. They should talk about joint custody and who gets to see the child when, and they should let that child spend as much quality time with that other parent as possible. Parents should remember not to manipulate each other, not to drag the child into adult choices. And also, parents need to identify and try to maintain the schedule as much as possible and not make the child guess about what's going to happen. In doing these things, children can benefit a lot from these steps and can not feel as many negative effects of divorce through these steps. And that's the goal. And divorce needs to be not always about what the parents can get, but also about what the children can get and what the children are going through.